Welcome back to another episode of Kream Soda Radio, where I tell you what I've been up to, the current goings on, and what will be happening in the very, very near future. Stick with me. What some of you have picked up on, and many of you still have not somehow deciphered, is that I have moved to another country. Yes, the country of Georgia. No, not the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia.
Wondered what happened to you.
Georgia is technically part of Europe, though it's located in Eurasia and bordered by Russia, Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the Black Sea. 550 miles north of Tehran, if that helps.
Holy smokes.
This country was under Soviet rule for most of the 1900s until the fall of the USSR in 1991. Ever since, it has been an independent and now unitarian government. Some of you might ask, why Georgia? Of all places, why 5,000 miles away from your hometown to the country of Georgia at the base of the Caucasus Mountains? Well, for one, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful country. Americans don't need a visa to reside here. But until you secure residency, i.e. pay enough taxes, you have to cross the border into Armenia or Azerbaijan, or you can take a flight somewhere, come back in, get your passport stamped again, and then your time starts over. So minor formality. A huge plus for me living in Georgia is that the tax breaks are favorable for digital nomads. And as a musician, my business codes allow tax breaks that are unfathomable elsewhere. There aren't many countries on the planet where I'm able to do what I do, pay what little tax I pay on doing it, and also be able to make a living and afford to live. My living costs are 1/4 of what they were in the United States. But I have to make it all from music and merch. Foreigners are not allowed to work here. Now, is that a law? No. The law is you can apply for a work permit in the country, and a lot of people do so, and then find out that there are absolutely no jobs for foreigners here. First of all, if you're not fluent in the language, it's going to negate your ability to perform the job anyway. I'd say probably 80% of the people here speak full Georgian, maybe a couple other languages, but not English, okay? You're not just walking up to people here speaking English. That's not how it goes. You've got to get in on the ground. You've got to learn the language. You've got to assimilate to some extent. I say that to say this. Moving here was a huge jump because now music and merch is all I have. That's my only way of making it, which is important for an artist at this stage of my career. Sometimes you have to make a move. You have to make a jump. You have to have no safety net, or you will not push yourself in the way you think you might when you're back home, working a job, doing whatever else it takes, you know. Me having spent the bulk of a decade in prison has allowed for my psyche to deal with a lot more circumstance than most people. So I can kind of go through anything and be okay, if that makes sense. I can do without a lot of the creature comforts that some people require to exist. Now, not to say that I'm not comfortable. I'm very comfortable. I actually reside in an old Soviet bloc project building. These buildings were built by the Soviets in the 50s and 60s to house residents during communist rule. And so everybody was given an apartment, and this is where you live, and you pay nominal bills, and et cetera, et cetera. I am in by no way, shape, or form a proponent of communism or socialism or any of that stuff. Just telling you how it all went down. But yeah, for more on Georgia, look it up, Google it, YouTube, watch YouTube videos. It's a beautiful place. Careful what you listen to. There's a lot of false information. You know, you can just come here and build a life. I wouldn't say that Georgia is a country you can come and build a life in. You kind of have to have a way to perpetuate that life before you get here, or you are absolutely screwed, for lack of a better term.
It makes sense. Come on, let's go.
And real quick, I'll explain my music release schedule. So here's how it's been going. Everything hits the website and Bandcamp first. This is to maximize revenue for myself as an independent artist, because this is how I pay the bills. It also gives my staunch supporters who look to assist monetarily in the production and existence of Cream Soda as a brand, they kind of get first dibs on everything, if that makes sense. But the 14-year-old music lover in me releases the music to SoundCloud soon after. And the reason I do that is because I understand that there are youngsters out there or people just simply aren't in the position to pay for music. And I get that. We've been trained now that music is free. I come from an era where that wasn't always the case, but society has definitely taken that stance. And whether or not it's sad, it's true. So, like I said, releases hit Bandcamp and creamsoda.com first to give my hardcore supporters a chance to obtain everything first and to financially assist with production of things. That being said, if you're paying attention on socials, then you will soon see that all of the tracks will periodically drop to DSPs here very soon. Some of them may actually hit DSPs before this drops, and or very, very soon after. So I'm not big on the pre-saves. I'm not big on this drops this Friday. I just kind of like to hit you guys with it when it drops. You know what I mean? But I will say that from here moving forward, all songs that are dropped to Bandcamp and the site and SoundCloud, what have you, within 3 months of its first release, it will hit DSPs and playlisting and all that jazz. So make sure you're following me on whatever DSP that you prefer. I'm not going to push you towards one or the other, though those tracks will show up here on my YouTube channel as well, via YouTube Music. So as far as my creative process goes, most of you know I'm not a huge behind the scenes guy. As a producer, you'll notice cats do the videos on socials where they're like, bopping the pads and playing the beat. And that's nice. And that works for some people content wise. And that's great, but that's not how you make a beat. And that would be being dishonest. If I'm keeping it real, the beat making process can be a tedious one. And by the time you get it set up to where you're playing the beat for someone on the pads, there's a lot that takes place before that. And I'd hate to make it seem that easy. It definitely is not. Not to mention, most times when I'm creating music, I'm sitting here first thing in the morning looking insane, or in the middle of the night looking crazy in my drawers, and like, nobody wants to see that shit. You do not want to see that shit. But to give you little tidbits, I always start with the sample. I've always been a sample guy. I find a sample that, to me, the sample is the soul of the beat. Whether or not I play chords or leads or build a melody on top of that, that'll be determined later on. But typically I always start with a sample. That's how I came up. That's how I learned this shit. And that's the style of music that I dig and enjoy. So that's what I do. And I'll build with whatever controllers I'm using at the time, whatever DAWs I happen to be in and out of, bouncing stems around and stretching and pitching or whatever I'm doing. That's how I begin my process. And then once I get the beat laid the way that I feel it will be displayed on the final version of the song, I mean, somewhere in that process, I might find a vocal sample. You notice I throw old movie clips and things like that into the beats. And whether I do that like early on or later on, that can happen at any point of the process. Sometimes that happens when I make the beat. Like I like it has a personality already, Sometimes those samples will lead me to what the song's about, or like a certain attitude or overall affect that the song has. So that helps as well. But just to be clear, sometimes they're there in the beginning. Sometimes I put them in there while I'm recording the vocals. When I take a break in vocals and I need a sample here, whatever. And then sometimes it's completely when the track is finished. It just kind of depends. That you can never tell when that's going to happen. And I can never tell where they're going to be or what it's going to be until later. So as far as my process with vocals goes, that can be all over the place. So there's often times where I'm writing to a track for a year or more in my head. So if vocals ever touch paper for me, that is only the day of recording. And that's when I'm lining like small finalities out about the track, if that makes sense. I don't particularly enjoy paper in the process. So let me tell you, there's a few ways that I record, okay? When you take a song like Impulse Control, for instance, Impulse Control is me turning on the mic and just going and going over and going over and going over until the song is finished and all the lyrics and ad-libs are in there. And there was no paper prior to that. There may have been a little bit of writing in the head, just like walking around listening to the beat. And I've got like certain runs or melodies that I'm going to do with the lyrics later on, like they're in my head, but I never know where they're going until day of, So that's one way that I record. Another example of how I'll record is like a Fully Smoked, right? So the Fully Smoked track, I sat down with a beat and just wrote all that in an hour. And then within 2 hours, you pretty much got the song, small mixes and tinkering here and there afterwards. But Fully Smoked is like a 2-3 hour process total if I already had the beat finished. You know what I mean? So I'll sit down and just write a hook, write 3 verses. And that's kind of like my old school way of doing things. That's how I grew up doing things. And the use for paper becomes, I don't really know how to explain it. Paper can be a help or a hindrance depending on what the track is, what I'm trying to convey on the track, and the energy of the track. And so I can never really tell with one track or another, like, am I gonna write this down? Is this something I'm just gonna go in and like kind of knock out, like off the cuff? Or is it kind of gonna be an amalgam of both? And so that's just, what I can tell you, what I absolutely do not do, and I never really have done. I don't have a notebook full of rhymes. That's not how I get down. I have notebooks with shit written down in them from songs that are recorded, like original lyric sheets, but I don't have like lyrics written that I will one day use in a song. Like that hasn't been my part of my process for decades, if I'm being honest. I remember one time I was traveling. I'm not a loser of things, right? I haven't had a lot of backpacks or wallets lost in my life, but one time I was traveling and I did have a backpack stolen. Had some Sony headphones in it, had a bunch of lyrics I had written down on this legal pad, and I had been writing those for probably months prior. So I lost like what was probably my last lyric book, and this is like in the early 2000s. I don't know if since then, but soon after that, I stopped becoming so dependent on anything that was written prior. And I also noticed that when you write lyrics, well, let me use I statements. When I write lyrics and then they sit, I wouldn't say they start to decay, but it's hard to attach myself to the energy that I had when I wrote the lyrics, which is why I don't like to write a lot unless I'm recording that day. Or like I said, it's something that's been going on in my head that's still like a live thing that hasn't ever been put to paper. And this may all sound like crazy shit, but this is my process. I don't do a whole lot of writing unless I'm recording that day, or I'm just trying to get this shit out of my head so I can look at it while I record. And then sometimes there's no paper at all. It's just me going till it's done.
Old ninjas never die.
All right, well, that's probably enough for one session, I'd imagine. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube, set notifications so you know when episodes are popping up or new music's popping up. I will do my best to keep you abreast of what's going on with me, music-wise, content-wise, life-wise. And once again, man, I'm going to keep it coming. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the music purchases. Just listening to the music on apps is love. I greatly appreciate that. Be sure to check out creamsoda.com for the latest merch. That literally keeps the lights on. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.